Last night, violence erupted between the Proud Boys and far-left groups like Antifa. We saw it in Washington, D.C. and Washington State, so East Coast and West Coast. In Washington State, somebody got shot, I believe, in the stomach. And I'm not entirely sure what their condition is. We'll read through the story, but my understanding is that there was a Trump supporter who was surrounded and being attacked, and a man came up in a parking lot armed and fired in defense of this man. In Washington, D.C., 4 people were stabbed. You can't have guns in D.C. And they're in critical condition. Of course, now the left is screaming as Proud Boys trends nationwide, saying, what have the Proud Boys done? This far-right violence. There's a video of the Proud Boys taking a Black Lives Matter banner off a church, I think it's a church, and then burning it in the street. And what do you want me to say about it? What do you want me to say about Proud Boys going after Antifa? Come on, tell me, far left. What am I supposed to say? Leftists? Media? Vox.com? BuzzFeed? What do you want me to say? When Antifa went around beating the crap out of people, you said it's good that they're chasing out these extremists. So when the Proud Boys go around beating up Antifa, am I supposed to just agree it's good that someone is going and beating up these extremists? You people have lost your minds. You see, for years now, we have seen the escalation of this violence. And now 4 people are in critical condition from stab wounds, and someone got shot. It's not the worst we've seen ever, but it's serious. It's pretty bad. And I could only say the same thing when I see Proud Boys going and tearing down banners and burning them. What do you think my complaint is when Antifa goes and burns the American flag? And maybe this is the big difference between someone like me and maybe a tribalist or a faction. First, I don't like the American flag being burned. But my issue is if it's your property, you can burn it if you want, so long as you're doing it safely. I do think it's kind of silly that these people think they have the right just to burn something in the street when a fire could probably cause some serious damage. But if it's your flag, do what you want. But when they go to someone's home and they rip the flag off their porch or their building and they burn it, now that's theft. Now that's more extreme and dangerous. And what do we get from the far left? They say it's good. They're just anti-fascists. You see, they're extremists, they say, that roam the streets. And the only way to stop them is to punch them in the face. That's what they keep saying. Do you have any idea what happens if you keep doing that? You invoke an equal and opposite reaction. In fact, I don't think it's fair to say equal and opposite. I think it's fair to say the far left, which tend to be dainty, gaunt-looking white progressives, are going to invoke a much more powerful opposite reaction. The Proud Boys tend to be better built, if that's one way I can put it. So when the Proud Boys go around beating the crap out of these extremists, first and foremost, I think it's all bad. I think the violence is all bad. We don't want any of this. We just want to live our lives and go to work. Well, unfortunately, the Democratic governors have really seen to us not being able to do that. But we don't want violence and escalation. But then there's no answer. There isn't any. There's literally no correct answer. There's no fence. There's no middle ground. I'll tell you why. Antifa has been going around beating and injuring and attacking people with near impunity. The media has defended them over and over again or lied to make it seem like they're just simple protesters. I've been covering this stuff for a decade. I've seen what these people do. They're insane, but they're clever. They're well organized, and they know there's a limit to the extent that they can engage in violence before they get bad press. When Andy Ngo was brutally attacked, the press was severe. All of a sudden, the media was writing stories saying Antifa is, too far. It's too far. And Antifa got really mad and then desperately tried to smear Andy Ngo to save face. They know they're organized. They have their limits. But also, let's be real. Many of these Antifa people, many of whom are armed and capable and smart. Many of them are gaunt, frail, white progressive men who are pampered and completely incapable. But there certainly are stronger individuals within the far left's, grouping. And there are certainly, I guess you can say men of stronger standing, better built. However, most of the Proud Boys tend to be better built than Antifa. So what do we get? I watched a video last night, and it was 2 Antifa being brutally beaten and chased down the street. it made it to the top posts on Reddit, and they said the Proud Boys are attacking an innocent couple. Apparently, the innocent couple were previously beating someone, and the Proud Boys surrounded them. And I thought to myself, it's really funny. Antifa are all tough when they have mobs to beat random people. So let's be real here. I watched a video out of Portland where 3 regular dudes, just random guys, are walking on the street, and Antifa stalked them, beat them, and pushed them. They weren't fighting back. They weren't involved. They were non-belligerents. Is that video going viral of the Proud Boys, them attacking random people? No. It was them beating up Antifa individuals who were previously beating other people. Now, when these people are trying to retreat and escape, and the Proud Boys run up and start punching them in the back of the head, and one guy grabs a woman's hair and pulls her to the ground, that's pathetic. That is spineless and pathetic. If you guys think you're tough and you want to defend somebody, by all means, if someone's being beaten, defend them, stand up to them. But if you're going to go up behind a woman and pull her by the hair and drop her to the ground, dude, you're almost as bad as Antifa. I know I can't say just as bad because it's not true, but that's pathetic. Don't grab a woman by the hair and pull her to the ground as she's fleeing. That's pathetic, and it's wrong. But there's a moral impasse in this news that I can't get past. I was thinking about what can I tweet. I saw this video. I don't like watching it. I don't like the fact the Proud Boys they stole a Black Lives Matter banner and then burned it. There's a video of a guy trying to steal another banner. Don't steal people's property. But what about when Antifa does it and the media gets away with it? I'm like, well, I can condemn it all, and I have no problem doing it. But there's a serious problem when the left advocates for and cheers for punching a Nazi, they say. Okay, sure. You do realize that you're going to invoke the other reaction, right? So when I see Antifa beating and injuring people and getting away with it, what can we do? Nothing. The police aren't doing anything. And I'm not too happy with cops right now anyway, because they're basically enforcing unconstitutional edict. Many of these sheriffs are doing all right, saying they're not going to enforce some of these gun laws and some of these lockdowns. But in bigger cities, I'm not going to come to the defense of any of these cops. They want to go and lock down people's lives and businesses and not deal with Antifa? Nah, sorry, you're on your own. But here's the problem. I'd love if the cops broke up the fights. Okay, good. Because it happened, right? Cops had pepper sprayed both sides. But what happens when you're told by the media for 4 years or more that it is good what Antifa is doing because the only way to stop fascism is to beat it? Okay, well, then the only way to stop communism is to do what? Beat it, right? I thought about that video I saw where the Proud Boys are just beating the ever-living crap out of these 2 Antifa. And I'm like, what's funny? All the left is screeching about this. I think it's bad because the Antifa were trying to run away. It's like, dude, you won the fight. Bye-bye. But I thought it was really funny that these Antifa people harass, they throw explosives at diners and restaurants, and they've done on multiple occasions. They demand you bend the knee, and the Proud Boys don't do that. The Proud Boys don't walk up people at restaurants and say, salute the American flag right now or else. They don't. Antifa does. They say, raise your fist or else. And they surround you and scream in your face. And they've thrown explosives into restaurants. That happened in D.C. They've also flipped over tables and trashed restaurants. So when the left keeps telling me the only way to stop the extremists is to punch them, and then I see a bunch of Proud Boys saying, we're going to punch them, I'm like, but that's what the media said to do. So then I wonder, if the cops aren't going to stop the extremists, well, then maybe the far left was correct. It's horrifying, isn't it? We don't want the violence or the escalation. But I'll tell you, man, I do think it just continues from here. Proud Boys the other day in D.C. were more like Antifa than I have ever seen, burning these banners and attacking these Antifa as they were trying to flee. And it's factional, though. The one thing they didn't do is just randomly attack innocent people. I know the left will claim that's true, but that's not true. The one thing I will say as well, and we'll read the story, is that Antifa is only empowered when they're in a group. And you know what? I found it actually kind of funny. Yeah, funny, haha. These 2 anti-fascists who were getting the ever-living crap beaten out of them, I was like, not so tough now, are you? Going around and beating random people and harassing restaurant goers and flipping tables because you're surrounded by your friends. But the moment someone steps up and says no and pushes back, y'all get stomped out. And it's all bad. It is all bad. What the Proud Boys did, you know what? I understand completely, based entirely off of how the left described everything. Well, yeah. What do you think's going to happen? I think all the violence is bad and it's going to escalate. But there's the inherent challenge, and why I say there's no middle ground, there's no fence, is that you either have Antifa beating and attacking and maiming people, terrorizing them, and cancel culture coming from the far left, terrorizing people. So both body and mind are under a state of terror where regular people can't speak up for who they want to vote for. They can't speak up in defense of what they believe in. Otherwise, they'll lose their job or get beaten in the streets. And the only thing that is likely to occur is the other side will respond. That was inevitable. And the police won't do anything about it. The police can't do anything about cancel culture. So you look at where we're at. The cultural institutions are all completely controlled by the far left, which means they own cancel culture and there is nothing you can do to stop it. Parler exists. They try to cancel that, but it doesn't seem to be working right now. But the infrastructure of technology is pretty much controlled by the far left as well. It's only a matter of time before Google or some other company seizes the DNS or servers of those hosting Parler. Because Parler is where the conservatives are. So long as that exists, there'll be serious trouble for the right to actually organize, and it will allow the far left to terrorize the lives of regular people. Antifa has beaten and attacked regular people. They've beaten people outside their homes. They've threatened people in their homes. In Portland, they did it. They went to a guy's house and demanded he take his American flag down. Otherwise, they'd burn it to the ground. I was hosting an event where it was called, I think it was called like Ending Authoritarianism, Racism, and Violence. And our keynote speaker was one of the most notorious de-radicalizers of Klan members, Daryl Davis. And Antifa threatened to burn the theater down. And they were harassing the other venues that were involved. And they came and they threatened us with violence. The police locked the street down. It's been a terror campaign endlessly from these extremists on the far left. Now that the Proud Boys came out and have done essentially what Antifa does, but only to Antifa, mind you, stealing the banners and stuff like that, also wrong because that wasn't to Antifa, but it was to Black Lives Matter, so it was far left, I suppose, ideology. Now the media is starting to, Twitter, because the institutions are controlled by the left, are freaking out. And that's the problem the conservatives have. They have no control over cultural institutions, for the most part. But again, there's no middle ground. There's either you agree with the violence of the Proud Boys or you agree with the violence from the Antifa. What do you say? I mean, the violence is all bad, but am I supposed to sit back and just be like, it's a good thing that Antifa is not being stopped by anybody and the cops aren't doing anything and they're beating random people? Of course not. It's a bad thing. So then we ask, can someone please do something? How do we stop this? Nothing is stopping it. Nothing is stopping it. The police won't arrest them. And when they do, on the rare occasion, they get cut loose by the district attorneys. They're flipping tables at restaurants. They're throwing explosives at regular people. Then finally, the only thing that can happen is the Proud Boys come up and attack them. And what am I supposed to say? It's the only outcome because regular people are snapping. And I tell you, it's the greatest recruitment drive for Proud Boys. To see a video, finally, of these black-clad terrorists getting, some kind of comeuppance or just being stopped, people are going to cheer for it. I wish it never happened because it's all bad. Yep, there it is. Still trying to be some kind of centrist on this. The problem is, if the Proud Boys don't show up, then Antifa terrorizes regular people. So there's no answer. There's none whatsoever. Other than saying violence is bad and we don't want any of it. It's just going to get worse. The Daily Mail reports, clashes erupted between members of the Proud Boys and Black Lives Matter protesters in D.C. 4 protesters were stabbed and transported to hospital in critical condition. 8 people in total went to the hospital over the course of the night, including 2 officers. There were 23 arrests as Proud Boys and BLM fought. The massive pro-Trump crowd had gathered after the Supreme Court issued Trump with yet another loss Friday night in dismissing a case filed by the Texas Attorney General. Trump also lost his Wisconsin case as well. Michael Flynn was there. Alex Jones was there. Enrique Tarrio. Meanwhile, in Washington state, a person was shot in similar violent clashes between protest groups. Washington State Police declared a riot in Olympia around 1:30 p.m. Pacific time. And in Sacramento, 5 cops were injured and 6 people were arrested following violent protests. There's a ton of crazy videos. You see this in Olympia, Washington. Black-clad, mask-wearing terrorists have been going around and attacking regular people for years now, and the Proud Boys have done nothing other than counter them. But more importantly, the Proud Boys, although they do hold rallies in cities like Portland, the Proud Boys will hold their rallies, and then Antifa shows up and fights them. That tends to be the case. The Proud Boys aren't seeking out these individuals for the most part. The Proud Boys choosing to go to Portland is stupid because they know they'll show up. So at a certain point, they kind of are. So we have a bunch of photos here, a ridiculous amount of photos. I want to show you something. You see all of these black text, like they're captions, okay? And you can see all these, photo symbols. I had to remove all these photos. You know why? Because they were gruesome and violent. Many depicted blood and injury. And aside from me typically removing graphic images because I don't show graphic images, that's basically the gist of it. I had to remove all of these because it was violent, bloody, fists flying, and that's crazy. I've never had to go through an article this much, just like taking out these photos because it was graphic and violent. You might notice I don't show this stuff. Sometimes people get mad. They say, why don't you show the videos? Because look, man, sometimes there are people that want to know what's going on, but they don't want to see the photo of a guy whose face is covered in blood, I guess. And I try to be family friendly so that people can listen to this and watch these videos when maybe their kids are around. To be completely honest, I got a bunch of messages very early on several years ago from people asking to try and talk in the news, but keep it as family friendly as possible. I can still talk about someone getting shot in the stomach and 4 people being in critical condition. I'm not going to show it. You can go to the Daily Mail and you can see the photos. They're brutal, but you can see that people are increasingly getting in each other's faces. The crowds are getting bigger. Here's more photos I had to take out. Here's the Proud Boys rallying in D.C., and I can only imagine there's going to be more of them to come. Not every single person who showed up was a Proud Boy. Just some Trump supporters, people on the right. I do think it's very strange that many on the right will praise the police as the police pepper spray them and attack them, because I'm over it. I'm over these D.C. cops. I'm not praising any D.C. cops. They're the ones who allowed the mayor to illegally change the name of a street and paint a political slogan. I'm not praising these Praetorian Guard for the far left lunatics. I'll tell you this, man. I have no idea how at this point Trump supporters are in support of cops in blue cities. You want to be in support of cops in rural areas who are accountable and uphold the Constitution? If you want to be nice to them and praise them, defend them, do it to it. I will as well. Not every cop is the same. And that's one of the problems I have with the idea of saying all cops are bad. Well, they use a different word for it. Or saying every cop. Many, yeah. Because there are still rural cops in, say, like New York State who will suppress your Second Amendment rights in First and Fourth and Fifth, et cetera. And there are many states where they're just bad cops across the board, from state troopers or otherwise. But I think it really comes down to blue state versus red state. Maybe the institution of policing is bad because even in a red state, they'll still uphold unconstitutional law, I suppose. But at this point, I can at least differentiate between the cops in New Jersey and the cops in, say, Pennsylvania. They're not perfect in Pennsylvania, but I can absolutely tell you the difference between a cop in West Virginia and a cop in New Jersey. So if you're in Washington, D.C., these cops are enforcing far left illegal activity. Look at that. In New York City, the NYPD is aiding and abetting far left illegal activity. I'm not exaggerating. The mayor used taxpayer dollars to paint a far left slogan in the street in violation of the law, and then has 27 NYPD protect it. Those cops are criminals. They're committing crimes. I don't care if they're wearing a badge. If someone breaks the law and you aid them, you're an accomplice. They're oath breakers. They're mindless drones that don't care that they're breaking the law and protecting those who do. And therein lies the very serious problem we're facing as a country. What happens when there are police who blatantly break the law? I mean, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, right? I guess it's not technically codified statutory law, in which case you can't necessarily, it's not legally illegal. It's like by legal definition, it's unconstitutional. There's a difference. Something unconstitutional gets resolved in court. Something illegal, there's a penalty in civil or criminal court. But if the Constitution is supreme law of the land, then what are these cops who think they have a right to police whether or not you practice your Second Amendment right or otherwise? In New York State and many of these blue states, the cops brazenly break the law and they don't care. They don't. I'm not stupid enough to say they're all bad, but I can understand why Antifa says it because, well, they're really dumb. You know what I mean? People like Antifa tend to live in big cities and have no idea what life is like out in the middle of nowhere. And they've never interacted with, county departments or smaller towns and things like that, sheriffs, etc. In which case, they think every cop is a city cop. Well, you know what? I don't completely disagree at this point. There was a time when I was absolutely defending the police when they were rioting and, smashing people's windows because they were targeting regular people, and we need the police to defend them. I'm still of that opinion. But when the police decide to enforce things that aren't laws, when Governor Cuomo says your restaurant is done, when Newsom says your restaurant is done, and the cops just come out and go, we don't care if it's the law or not. We're just going to oppress and suppress your rights. Well, then those cops are criminals and oath breakers. I'll put it this way. Just because the governor says you can't have your restaurant open doesn't mean you can't have your restaurant open. Or more importantly, when the governor says you can't go to church, he literally can't do that. He has no authority to do it, none whatsoever. And the Supreme Court has already said that. So if a cop shows up and says you can't do it because the governor said, it's basically like a criminal threatening you and then some random person with a gun showing up and enforcing that threat. Not law enforcement. And it's funny to see many Trump supporters saying the same thing, calling out these cops who are enforcing these edicts, saying they're not enforcing the law because these aren't laws. And that's what we saw in Staten Island. So maybe I'll tell you what's going to happen. You call it a civil war, you call it a decoupling, whatever you want to call it. There's going to be a loss of confidence in the federal government, and it's already happening. It's been happening. I don't know if that means there will be states fighting states, but it could just be, West Virginia being like, we don't care what law you pass anymore. It doesn't impact us. It doesn't affect us. And we're not going to abide by it. Since we have sanctuary states and we have many counties declaring themselves Second Amendment sanctuaries, federal government's authority is as far as most people are concerned. So I'll tell you what's going to happen. When the red states slowly stop caring about what happens in blue states because they're going to take care of themselves, the police in these blue states are going to have no one to support them. And they're just going to become enemies of everybody because the city folk hate the cops already. And the Republicans who basically don't live in these cities are probably going to be like, I don't care. You go do your thing. You pass these laws, you want them, they're yours. I'm not defending you. And that's what I think is coming in the next several months. Of course, I'm not psychic. We'll see how it plays out. It's always possible that people calm down, but I really don't see it. You know why? After Trump got elected the first time, a bunch of far leftists went around D.C. burning and torching things. It's only worse now. It's only escalated. So why would things just stop here? There's no reason for it to, especially after we see what's happening with the Proud Boys marching through the streets. So, look, I'll leave it there, but I do want to say one last thing. A lot of people say, Tim, why use a Daily Mail so much? Well, I can tell you. Take a look at how long this article is. It's got 42 photographs. It goes all the way down. It talks about Alex Jones and Michael Flynn. Look how long this is. Isn't this huge, all these photos? It's a very, very long and in-depth article. When I originally went to ABC News, it's only a couple hundred words. When I went to The Hill is only a couple hundred words. And so then I ultimately went back to the Daily Mail where they have several thousand words and 42 photos. That's just basically the simple explanation. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.